Alrighty, it's 9:03, so let's go ahead and get started. Welcome back, everyone, to our 12 days of systems to move you from ideas into action. Yesterday, we wrapped up the lead generating portion of that series. And today we're going to step into some ideas on how to set your business up to grow by adding leverage. So as always, if you have any questions as we go through this, don't hesitate to unmute yourself, interrupt me, totally okay. You can raise your hand there on your Zoom screen, or you can throw something in the chat box. I do have that open as well. So I usually try to pay attention. But if you've got your hand raised or throw something in the chat and I haven't answered your question, or if you've got an idea that you want to share, you're more than welcome to do so. So just interrupt and we will move on. So let's get started with today's class. Our learning objectives today are we're going to talk about the how and the when to add to your team. We're going to cover the order that the MREA recommends. That's the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book. We're going to talk about what it recommends to hire in order to achieve sustainable growth. And then we'll talk about first steps, move on to what should be delegated first, steps to increasing your leverage, and when you should hire, as well as how to prepare for that process. It's never too early to start preparing. So the first is to figure out how and when to hire to add to your team. Okay, for most agents, it's going to be around 8 to 12 transactions. Okay, so when you're consistently doing 8 to 12, not, oh, I've done 8 transactions in the last 2 years, but when we're on track to do 8 to 12 transactions in a year, we've got some consistency there, then that's when you want to look at growing your business. Okay, it's at that point that you're going to need help to either like take tasks off your plate to free up more time for lead generation, or there's tasks that you're just not getting to that you would like to do. Like we talked about yesterday, Stephen mentioned, like we talked about the VIP program and he was interested in that, but he's like, man, this seems like it would take a lot of bandwidth to like roll that out and have that as part of your business. This is where those hires can come in and help free up your time to be able to do those projects. So again, usually 8 to 12 transactions. The other option is to look at it more objectively, which means that you can calculate out your hourly wage. It gives you an objective way to evaluate what your time is worth, and if you are at a point to make your next hire. So to calculate your hourly wage, you're going to take your gross income, you're going to divide it by 2,000 hours per year. That gives you your value in an hourly rate. Okay, we use 2,000 just because that's the average hours you should be working on a yearly basis. Once you have that number, so like if we were to take 120,000, let's say that I made 120,000 this last year, divide by 2,000, that gives me $60 per hour. So my time is worth $60 per hour. We take it a step further to get our buyback time. And that's going to ensure that we have an ROI or return on our investment when it comes to a hire, right? So at the 120,000 per year divided by 2,000, $60 per hour. If I divide that by 4, it's 15. So any task that I'm doing that I could replace by somebody that I could pay $15 an hour or less, those tasks should be offloaded. Okay, again, you still want to wait until you have enough income coming in to justify the hire and be able to support long-term. As your income goes up, so does that buyback rate. Okay, right? So if we moved from 120,000 this year to 250,000 next year, your buyback rate goes up to $31 per hour. So any task that I'm doing that I could pay somebody $31 per hour or less to do should get taken off my plate. Right? So that's how you kind of look at that buyback time and calculating your hourly rate. If you look at your hourly rate, it kind of changes the way that you think about things and the tasks that you do. My coach always says, like, if you don't have one, you are one, right? So if I am cleaning my house because I don't have a house cleaner, then I am a house cleaner, right? Or a chef or whatever it might be. So just kind of think that in mind. And when we think about tasks that we want to offload, sometimes when we think about it, it's not necessarily a business hire that comes first. It may, in fact, be some things that we do around our house that we offload first, right? You might hire a housekeeper on a monthly basis or a biweekly basis to take that off your plate. Number one, it frees you up to focus on business. And number two, if you're not using that time to focus on business, you can use it to actually spend time with your family. When I first hired our first housekeeper, my thought was I could either spend my weekend cleaning the house or I could spend my weekend playing with my kids. And that's what I wanted to do. So I leveraged my time that way. So just kind of think about that as well. Any questions about the calculating your wage per hour or your buyback rates? All right. So how do you know when you're ready to start building a team? Your first hire should be an independent transaction coordinator. Okay, do that now. Don't delay. There's no threshold for that hire. Your independent transaction coordinator is going to get paid per transaction. They already are doing business with other agents. Most offices have their own transaction coordinator, so utilize that. It's usually a cost of somewhere between $300 to $500 per transaction, and it's worth every penny. So please go ahead and offload that now. I'm giving you permission. As soon as you have one transaction, hire a transaction coordinator. In our office, I encourage all of our new agents to do one transaction on their own without a transaction coordinator. So if they understand how the system and process works, they know how to do compliance with their files and upload things into our system. And they understand the flow and everything that goes along with that transaction. And then by transaction two, they should hire a transaction coordinator. I just don't want them to get lost that if their transaction coordinator ends up in the hospital or something happens or they quit, that now they're dead in the water because they don't know what to do with their files. So I always recommend that you know what to do with your files first and then hire that transaction coordinator. Okay. So there's my soapbox about your transaction coordinator. Once you have consistent business, again, that's going to result in 8 to 12 transactions. That's when you should hire your first admin. Okay. The goal with each hire is that you're going to free up your time and get more done and offer a higher level of service so that you're going to be able to close more transactions. So each hire after your first hire, you should do when your business increases by about another 12 transactions. So the first hire is going to be 8 to 12, and then your next hire is going to be when you added another 12. So when you're on track or have closed 20 to 24 transactions, then you're going to bring on your second hire, which we'll talk about that. And then at 32 to 36 transactions, that's when you're going to make your third hire. We do it systematically so that you can maintain the growth and support that team as we go. Okay. What happens with your first few hires is it's going to move a little slower. And then as you begin to gain speed, you're going to add to your team exponentially, right? So when you start bringing on showing assistants and your buyer's agents, those people are actually going to bring transactions to the table. Your listing agents. So they're going to help bring their own business in addition to the leads that you're generating for them. So that's going to cause that exponential growth that's going to start happening once we get into like hires number 4, 5, and 6. All right. The MREA has a full organizational model, ultimately leading to you working yourself out of your business. Okay. Final destination is that your organizational model will have you and then a CEO that oversees all areas. And then we break that down further into 3 specific areas. One area of your business will be lead generation. You'll have a lead generation manager with 2 departments. The inside sales associate or those that handle the warm leads, the nurture, and they set those appointments. And then you'll also have an outside sales associate or the team that handles all the cold or new or captured leads. The next area is your director of sales. That's going to oversee your buyers and your listing agents. Your buyers agents oversee showing assistants, which we'll talk about. And then the third area that you'll have is your director of operations. You could also call it like client care director. That person's going to oversee listing managers and the transaction coordinators. Okay. So once you've determined that you've reached a point where you need to hire to be able to continue to grow, or hire to make sure that you can continue to grow and offer the same or higher level of service, or some people may want to hire just to maintain lifestyle, right? You may be like, Amy, I don't want like a big team where I remove myself, but here's what I want. I'd like to get to like 36 or 48 transactions, and I'd still only like to work 30 hours a week, right? That's where hires come in, because you can leverage your time to take it back. Okay. The first hire, as we talked about, is going to be that transaction coordinator. You don't need to do any of those calculations for that. You're going to hire that person today if you don't already have one. Your next hire that you're going to do is going to be an administrative assistant. Okay. So when we get to those 8 or 12 transactions, we're going to hire an admin. And I know you might be thinking like, man, I've got a steady stream of business and I'd really like to bring on like a buyer's agent or a showing assistant, because man, I hate getting in the car and showing people homes. But don't do that. Okay. We're going to hire an admin first, which ensures that your customers are going to be taken care of before we add more customers. Okay. So admin goes first. Okay. So for today, we're going to assume that you have a transaction coordinator, but it's not a dedicated transaction coordinator that's working only with you. And you're going to pay them on average $350 to $500 per transaction, depending on what they do for you. So what tasks will that first admin do? Okay. They're going to help you solidify and create your systems and processes. Remember, that's what we've talked about for like the last 3 weeks now, is systems and processes. They're going to help you solidify those systems and processes. Usually we have some systems and processes, but we haven't actually written them down by the time we make our first hire. So that admin is going to help you create a system of playbooks or action plans that are going to detail all the steps of each systems. Okay. That's going to make it so that you can just duplicate and repeat. In addition, you're going to hand off all of your email management to that first admin. They're going to become your first line of defense. They're going to review all emails, respond to ones that don't need your input, and flag the ones that do need your input so that you can review and respond. Okay. Next, your admin should be in charge of your calendar, adding appointments, responding to invites, and even putting personal items on your calendar. They're going to make sure they know what you have going on during your whatever you consider business hours. Okay, making sure nothing gets double booked, making sure everything's clean and clear, make sure you know what you have going on each day. Next, this admin should then take on all things client care related. This is probably going to start with your database, making sure all your contacts are in that database, adding those that aren't already in there, and then finding and filling in missing information. Like if you don't have everybody's home anniversaries in there, making sure that's in there, looking for addresses, filling in phone numbers or emails, right? Like sometimes in our phone, we have phone numbers, and in our emails, our email system, we have emails, but we don't have them together on the same contact. So they're going to help combine all of that information so that it's all complete inside of your database. Your admin is then going to implement and create those interaction plans that we've been talking about, right? Completing any, and they're also going to complete any of those interactions that don't need you to complete them. Right. So we've talked about at the very beginning, the first 3 days, we talked about how to reach out to your database and how to deal with leads with like the 36 plus to connect or to convert. We've talked about the 12 by 1, the 8 by 8, the 19 to connect. Your admin's going to help you solidify those plans in that database. Because although we've talked about those oftentimes as a single agent, you don't ever quite get around to setting those up. You don't take the time to do it. So now we're going to take the time to have our admin do that for us. They can also do things like create those newsletters, set up property searches, send out text messages if your system allows for that. They can update the notes for you. So if you had a conversation with a client as you were heading to another appointment, you can just shoot them over a voice message or a text message and say, hey, please update the notes on this client. They can do that for you. They can set the reminders. They can make sure everybody's tagged appropriately. They can do all things database. They should own the database, that first admin. Okay. Some additional items that your first hire may take on, they may be your first line of defense when it comes to phone calls, which means that all phone calls would go to them first. They can answer most of the questions probably agents call and ask you, or other people call and ask you. And then they would only forward over to you the calls that were necessary for you to actually talk to people. The admin will help develop those systems and processes around your listing and buyer transactions so that you create consistency during those transactions. And they're going to take all the tasks off your plate around the lead generation that don't need you to be physically there. Okay, what does that mean? That's like, well, yesterday we talked about, or the day before, no, it was yesterday, the open house plan, right? There were several things in there that were like, prep your Google Drive folder, create the materials, the marketing materials. Your admin can do those things for you. Okay. Obviously, they can't make the phone calls for you. They can't knock on doors for you or host the open, but they can do everything else. So how much time do you think you would have if you were able to take your emails, your calendar, your database management off your plate? Did you just free up a whole bunch of time? Thumbs up, head shakes. Yeah, right. So at this point, you're going to hold on to lead generation, transaction management, except for what your TC handles, marketing, and then those buyer and seller appointments and contract to close. The goal by making your first admin hire is that it's going to free up enough time where you should be able to add another 12 transactions or just about double that gross income just by hiring an admin. Okay. Hire number 2 and 3 can happen in either order. There's no wrong or right way to this. It used to be that we hire admin and then a buyer's agent, but then we introduced showing agents to the market. And so now a showing assistant could go in place in between admin 1 and admin 2. Okay, there's no wrong or right answer. It just kind of depends on what you need in your business. The second admin is going to take on all of the marketing for listings, buyer transactions, and lead generation to include your social media. So all marketing, right? So they're going to now be creating and sending out your postcards, your flyer creation. They're going to be doing all of the behind the scenes for your lead generation methods. Your first admin is going to keep your email, your calendar, and your phone management, and they're going to hold on to client care and database management. Okay. The showing assistant is going to take on scheduling showings and the actual showing of homes and reporting back to you at how it went. Okay. Your showing assistant may also attend inspections. They may also be there for appraisals. They may open the doors for buyers once they're in contract. Maybe they want to go measure for their boat or see if their couch will fit or other transactionally related open doors. Your showing assistant is basically your door opener. Okay, oftentimes your showing assistant gets compensated like a door rate every time they go open a door. Plus, they usually get paid like a small percentage of each transaction. It may be like 5% of the transaction so that they help through the close of escrow. Okay, again, these 2 hires, your admin number 2 and your showing assistant, should continue to free up your time and ensure that your clients are being well taken care of. You're still going to hold on to the actual lead generation, buyer and seller appointments, and transaction management that's not owned by your TC. And you're going to oversee the showing assistant. Your admin number 1 is going to oversee admin number 2. Okay. When we do this, remember we talked about hiring, we wait until we have 8 to 12 transactions, then we're going to hire admin number 1. Then we should have another about 12 transactions. So we're consistently doing your up to like 24 transactions per year. 20 to 24 transactions is when we would then make hire number 3, which would either be the showing assistant or the admin 2. We're not going to hire these at the same time. If we hire a showing assistant, that showing assistant should help you be able to leverage your business to add another 12 transactions. So when we're consistently looking at about 36 transactions, it's going to be 32 to 36. That's when you're going to bring on admin number 2. Or you could flop those around. They're interchangeable either way, but we're not going to do it at the same time. Once we're getting closer to 44 to 48 transactions, Then we're going to make our next hire, which would be hire number 4. Connie, I will get back to you on how much you're going to pay your admins. There's lots of different structures around that. But keep in mind too that, like, at least in California, you know, somebody can go work at Chick-fil-A for $17 an hour. So if you want like somebody that can actually do the job, you're probably looking at a higher rate than that. And then it also is going to vary, you know, depending on whether they're a 1099 employee versus a W-2 employee, and whether you know, following all those guidelines and restrictions. So there's a lot encompassed with how much you would pay the admins. Some people also bonus out admins, depending on like what they're doing and if they help drive business, or build their business, drive transactions. Stephen, how much do you pay per door for a showing assistant? It kind of varies depending on the market. I usually pay like $50 for one door and then $25 for each additional door, but sometimes it's like $10. It kind of depends on like how far the doors are apart from each other and how far they have to drive from our main business hub in order to go open doors. Like, I paid somebody to go open a door for me last week, but it was a 30-minute drive and it was only one door. I paid him $100. So it just kind of depends, and it depends again on your market. Again, we're in a market where, you know, you can go work again at Chick-fil-A for $17 an hour. So I want to make it worth their time. And our gas is also, you know, almost $5 a gallon. So I've got to cover their gas. It used to be a lot less. It used to be, hey, I'll pay you $25 minimum and $10 per door. And then the price of gas started going up and up. And I've got to make it worth their while. So I kind of factor that in, and also factor in drive time, how far out they have to go to show the properties. All right. Hire number 4. By hire number 4, you should be close to 40 transactions per year. This means that you can probably hire your own dedicated transaction coordinator versus outsourcing. Okay, there comes a point where if you're paying $300 to $500 per transaction, and now you're paying, you know, $1,000 to $1,500 per month in transaction coordinator fees, you're better off having your own. Okay, because that's your transaction coordinator is going to do more than that outsourced transaction coordinator has been doing for you. The TC is going to take on all transactional related items. They're going to maintain compliance with your brokerage's transaction system, whatever that is. They're going to make sure they're reviewing disclosures and documents for completeness, sending docs for signatures, and sending back to the appropriate people once they're completed. So that's all the stuff the normal TC does. In addition, your transaction coordinator can schedule photos. They can schedule pre-inspections for listings, inspections, and walkthroughs for buyers. They can arrange signings. They can schedule you on your calendar for key delivery, right? They can let your marketing admin know when to send postcards out, whether it's like, you know, new listing, in contract, sold. They can let them know when to send those postcards out, and any other systems and processes you have in place during those transactions. So my transaction coordinator, when I hired my own transaction coordinator, she took on, like, I would get a contract and I would email it over to her with the buyer's contact information. She would then implement our buyer touch campaign. So we had a system of emails that went out for our buyers, starting with a congrats, you're in contract. And then same thing with our listing agreements. As soon as I had a signed listing agreement, I pass it off to that transaction coordinator. And then we had a 7 or 8 series of emails that go out to them before their house even goes on the market. It talks about things of like what should go and what should stay. Is there anything that's a fixture that they want to take with them, right? It talked about like making sure they have smoke detectors and their water heaters are double strapped. It talked about how to set their house up for showing and how to prepare for photos. So we had this whole string of emails, and now my transaction coordinator was managing and sending all those emails out for me. Also, we have like a Google form that we send out for our MLS input. So she would send that out to my sellers so that they could fill out that input form, which then allowed her to be able to go in and input that listing into the MLS. I just took like an hour off my plate and handed it to my transaction coordinator. So just think of anything transactionally based, and that can go to that transaction coordinator. Okay. At this point, you're basically going to put a buyer in the contract. You're going to review the important documents, negotiate repairs or extensions, and show up to hand off keys. Everything else is going to be done by your transaction coordinator. Your showing assistant can be there for inspections and viewings in between, and your TC is going to handle all the coordination and conversations with your clients. Okay, this is going to free you up to do more transactions and free up your budget too, because we're actually going to save money. Okay, this role, your transaction coordinator, is also going to be overseen by admin number 1. That admin number 1 is really a key hire. So we need to keep that in mind as we're growing our organization. As more responsibility is taken on, you may need to increase wages. Okay. This is also going to take some of the stuff off that plate of that admin 1 too. So they're going to oversee this role. Any questions about having a dedicated transaction coordinator? Hire number 4. Okay. Okay, hire number 5. At hire number 5, you're finally ready to bring on your buyer's agent. Your goal here is to hire someone that will eventually move into the role of the lead buyer's agent. Okay, your buyer's agent is going to oversee your showing assistant, and it's also going to take on all of your buyer business, which means that you're now only working with sellers and your buyer's agent is only working with buyers. The buyer's agent is going to be supported by a showing assistant and supported by your transaction coordinator. And your buyer's agent should also take on a portion of the lead generation as well as be bringing in their own transactions. Okay, they should have their own database that they're bringing in, and they're starting those touch campaigns with their own database that's bringing business into yours as well. Okay, any questions about buyer's agent? Okay, once you've hit that, that's phase 1 is completed. Phase 2 is where you begin to phase yourself out of the daily operations of the business. Okay, you've already handed off buyers. A lot of people do phase 1 and then they kind of stop there. That's their comfort level and that's where they want to run their business. And that's totally fine if you want to do it that way. I would encourage you to think bigger and think about, gosh, what would it mean if I put myself in a position where I didn't have to show up for work every day? And what would it mean if I only had to like show up to list a property or work with a buyer because they're somebody that's really near and dear to me, right? What would that look like if I got paid for everything else that came through my business? So, at this point, you've handed off buyers. The next few moves are going to be some of the hardest. That's also why people have a hard time moving on beyond phase 1, is because you give up a lot more control in phase 2. Okay, your next hire number 6, is going to be an ISA or an inside sales associate. Okay, this ISA is going to be a key hire. And this hire is going to need significant oversight until you're comfortable with them doing their job. And the reason I say this, all the hires are going to need some oversight, training, check-in, make sure they're comfortable doing what they're doing. But on this one, they're actually making contact with your database and the people in there. And so we want to make sure that they're comfortable, they know how we would want to respond, that they know how to get those appointments booked, and that they know how we want our clients treated when they make contact with them. Your ISA is going to call and work and revive old leads. By now, you're somewhere around 50 to 60 transactions, and I'm sure your database is probably in the thousands, okay? So they're going to work on reviving some of those old leads, checking in with them, making those phone calls, making sure they're getting contacted quarterly, doing all those things. They're also going to handle any incoming leads, those things from like sign calls, or if you've got, social media running or anything like that. Okay. They're going to own the nurturing of those leads to the appointments. Okay. They're going to be making the phone calls. Do all of the hires have to be licensed real estate agents? Absolutely not, Connie. There's some pluses and minuses to having admins that are licensed versus not. Your showing assistant should be licensed. Your buyer's agents. Your ISA, it could go either way. You can actually hire unlicensed ISAs because they're just setting appointments and nurturing. They're not actually talking about anything real estate. So there's nothing wrong with having an unlicensed ISA. They're going to qualify those leads when they get ready to set those appointments and confirming the appointment. So they're going to do the calls, the nurturing. Somebody says, oh, I'm not quite ready yet, but touch base with me in 2 months, right? They're going to do all those follow-up phone calls, make sure they're being nurtured, working them to the appointment. Once they're ready to set that appointment, they're going to qualify that lead and make sure they're worth your time, make sure they're a ready, willing, and able buyer or seller. And then they're going to confirm that appointment for you to make sure that they're going to show up or that they're going to open the door for you when you go to knock. Okay, once the appointment is set and confirmed, the lead will then be passed off to either you or your buyer's agent, depending on whether it was a buyer or a seller. ISA. Hire number 7 is, now that you have your 3 admins in place, you have your lead buyer's agent in place, you have your ISA handling all the lead revival and nurture, it's time to start thinking about handing off your listings. And why do we wait to hand off listings till almost the last thing? Because we leverage those listings for leads. Our listings are super important for us. Hire number 7 is going to be that listing manager. The person's also going to become you, right? They're going to go on listing appointments. They're going to handle anything that needs to be done from pre-listing to close the escrow. Oftentimes, your first buyer's agent that you hired, if they're really stellar and they're managing those showing assistants well and they've proved themselves, and oftentimes what happens is we take that buyer's agent and we move them over to become the listing agent. Oftentimes that showing assistant then moves into the buyer's agent role. We can have a succession plan in place and we can have a growth plan, which makes your company or your organization more likely that you're going to find qualified individuals for. So it's okay to move people inside of your organizations into the next step. Okay. Your TC is going to handle most of the transaction once that listing is in contract. Your admin number 2 or your marketing admin should be handling most of the pre-contract activities, getting that property marketed, getting it ready to go, scheduling the pre-inspections, scheduling your photos, doing all of that stuff. And this listing agent is going to become and start taking on that lead generation for listings. Okay, the goal here is that this is going to free you up to oversee and manage your organization. And oftentimes what happens is we hand off our listings, but we don't necessarily hand off lead generation first. We make sure that they're handling those listings appropriately, that they're showing up for those listing appointments. They can get signed listing agreements. They can manage it all. And then we start handing off those lead gen activities. But we still run that to make sure our business level is maintained. Okay, after we hire this listing agent or listing manager, from here, the fun starts, right? Your business is now a well-oiled machine. It's going to continue to grow and run. And the goal is either now to maintain or increase the level of service. And to do that, you're going to need to fill some additional positions, right? We're looking at adding additional buyer's agents, maybe additional listing agents, runners, listing manager, lead coordinator, assistant transaction coordinator, and possibly an OSA. Okay. So at this point, you're still in play overseeing your organization. You will be over your listing team and your buyer team. Okay. In addition, you're still going to own that lead generation strategy. You're going to be in charge of hiring, the firing, and the managing. Okay. You'll be responsible to train and coach those in your organization, and you're going to meet with your executive staff weekly. Your executive staff would be your marketing admin, your lead listing specialist, your buyer specialist, and maybe your head TC. Okay. Your lead listing specialist will secure listing appointments, get the listings, the weekly seller calls to update them on progress, negotiating offers, repair requests, and if necessary, any price adjustments. That's all handled by your lead listing specialist. Your lead listing specialist may add additional listing agents under their supervision as the business begins to grow and they have more listings than they can handle on their own. Okay. They're also going to lean heavily on the TC team, which we'll get to the transaction team here in a minute. And oftentimes, as I mentioned before, that buyer's agent becomes your listing agent that then becomes your lead listing specialist. And adding value as you're hiring for your team if you have that kind of growth plan or succession plan in place. The lead buyer specialist is going to secure buyer appointments, get buyer agreements, show and sell properties, check in with buyers weekly, negotiate offers, repair requests, and any other contract modifications. Okay, lead buyer specialist. Your lead buyer specialist is going to be in charge of showing assistants and any additional buyer's agents that are added to handle the workload. Okay, we always add showing assistants first because if we can offload the showing of properties, it frees us up to negotiate more contracts. But once we've gotten a place, we've got so many buyers, it's hard to keep track of, hard to negotiate all those contracts. Then we're going to add another buyer agent to the workload. Oftentimes, again, that showing assistant becomes the buyer's agent, and then we hire a new showing assistant. That allows us to train them how we want to do business appropriately. Okay. In addition to managing the lead listing specialist and the lead buyer specialist, you're also going to manage the marketing and admin team. Okay. Your original admin hire is going to become your marketing and admin manager. This position is going to oversee all your lead generation systems and make sure that they are executed. They're in charge of your communication systems, also known as email, phone, calendar. And in addition, they take over the oversight of your financial systems, right? Making sure that your P&Ls, the receipts are taken care of, expenses are handled. They're going to oversee lead coordination. They're going to oversee the ISA and OSA team and the transaction coordination team. Okay. Your lead coordinator is going to receive, source, and assign leads. They're going to handle all the database entry and the tracking of your leads, right? They're going to make sure that they're dispersed appropriately to the right people. Your ISA is the inside sales associate. They're going to handle all the warm leads, contact, and convert them into transactions. Your ISA may also be the one like inviting people to events and anything else phone related with regards to your actual existing database, those that are your connected leads in that database. Okay. The OSA role is an optional role. That would be our outside sales associate. Some teams have their buyer's agent fill the OSA role for their leads, and other teams keep the buyer's agents focused on just attending appointments, getting buyer agreements signed, and getting buyers in the contract. So it depends how you want to run your business. So the other way is your OSA comes in to handle all the leads. So if our buyers aren't handling our leads, then the OSA is handling those leads. They're going to handle all the cold leads or just those captured leads, not ones that are connected yet. Once they're connected, they get moved over to the ISA. They're going to execute that 12-by-1 plan where they like new open house leads. They're making sure they're connected with them every day for the 12 times in the first week. Then they're going to roll them to that 8-by-8 plan where they're connecting with them 1 time a week for 8 weeks. And then they're going to roll them into that 19 plus to connect plan. Okay. Once they start responding and they move from captured to connected, then they get moved over to the ISA. If your buyer's agents are handling these, your buyer's agents can handle and nurture until they move into an actual appointment. Or until they stop responding, then they get handed off to the ISA if they're tired of working that lead, depending on how you want to run your organization. There's no wrong or right answer to this. Okay. And then that marketing and admin manager oversees your transaction team. So as you grow your business, the number of transactions you're going to is going to continue to grow. So you're going to create a whole transaction team. The positions that fall under your transaction coordinator are going to be your listing manager, your runner, and your assistant to the transaction coordinator. So your lead transaction coordinator is going to cover contract to close. They're going to select and manage vendors or those key vendor relationships, and they're going to handle client communication. The assistant to the transaction coordinator will manage all of the phone calls, handle the overflow of compliance and admin tasks as delegated by the head TC. They're there to back up the transaction coordinator. The listing manager is going to handle the creation of CMAs, listing marketing, seller communication, and all seller related admin tasks. So if the ISA sets a listing appointment for one of your listing agents, that listing manager is going to go in there and set up that pre-listing packet for you so that you're ready to go for your listing appointment. And then they're going to handle kind of all the seller related tasks, listing related tasks. The runner is going to handle any physical tasks outside of the office. May include installing and removing lock boxes, duplicating keys, picking up closing gifts, picking up items from the printer, and any other out of office tasks. Okay, they're just there to do whatever is needed. They can go pick up closing packages. They can do anything and everything. And that's kind of how it's going to set up your organization. So you're going to break it into those three things: your transaction team, your marketing and admin team, and your agent team. Okay, you're gonna have 3 areas of business. The ultimate goal is that you're going to hire a CEO to replace you in the business. And at that point, the CEO is going to take on your responsibilities, allowing you to step out of the daily activities of the business. Oftentimes that first admin, if they're still with us, oftentimes that admin now moves into that CEO role if that's something that they're wanting to do. Otherwise, we may want to hire somebody else. It all depends on kind of what your business looks like and how you want to organize that. That causes you to go from like, self-employed and running your organization to now you're the owner of a company. Any questions so far about how that kind of works? All right. Don't wait until you are ready to hire to start preparing to hire. As soon as you have systems and processes in place, you want to start creating playbooks, which will help you complete the handoff when you are ready. So how do you create a playbook? One of the best ways is as you're completing tasks, maybe you're inputting a listing into the MLS, maybe you're writing an offer, whatever it might be, you're going to do, and they're also recording their own videos for hires moving forward. Books for the tasks that they do once they have a handle on them. So as you grow your organization and tasks get handed off to the next person, we can just hand that playbook off to the next person. A really good way to do this would be to create like a Google Drive folder of playbooks and label each one with what that task is. This also makes it easy that if your admin decides to quit on you, or there's a different opportunity, or maybe they decide to go be a stay-at-home mom or a stay-at-home dad or whatever that might be, or maybe they've got to go take care of a parent and they decide they have to leave your organization, it makes it a lot easier to hire that replacement admin because you have playbooks ready to go detailing what that person did for your organization. Any questions? All right. Now I'm going to bring up our sponsor for this training, which is Cyberbacker. If you're looking for an affordable solution for your administrative roles, marketing specialist, transaction coordinator, ISA, lead coordinator, or listing manager, I encourage you to check out our sponsor, Cyberbacker. They can help you hire for any of the roles that don't require a license or physical presence for a fraction of the cost of hiring in person. In addition, there's no additional fees, taxes to withhold, unemployment to pay, or workers' compensation fees. So remember we talked about Chick-fil-A is hiring at like $17 an hour. I actually think it's up by now, but it's at least $17 an hour. You can hire a full-time admin for under $10 an hour. That's like fabulous. So Abby, who's on my recordings all the time or on the screen all the time, Cyberbacker Abby, she's my Cyberbacker. She handles all my stuff for me. I actually probably would just be in a pile in the corner in a ball if I didn't have Abby helping me. She does all my recordings for me. She manages our database for us. She does more than I could even mention. But Cyberbacker will assist you with the hiring and training process and offer continued support after you hire them. And if you're interested in learning more about what Cyberbacker can do for you in your business, you can join us for a 30-minute webinar today at 12:30 Pacific time. We'll put the link in the chat box if you want to register for that, or you can schedule a business consultation. We'll put a link for that in the chat box as well if you wanted to talk with somebody about how we can fit into your business. And that brings us to the end of today. Tomorrow, we're going to talk about how to create an exit plan. I was like, what does that say? Create an exit plan by building wealth. So we'll talk about some different ways to kind of change your mindset as you move through this process to look at building wealth so that you can do more than you ever thought was possible. Also, side note, on the 15th of January at 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time, I'll be hosting a business planning clinic. So if you don't have a full business plan put together for 2024, you're welcome to join us for that. I've got spreadsheets and tools I'll be sharing with the people who join for that class. They'll have links to create your own that'll help you set up your goals, set up your action plan, and all the tracking that you need to do for all of your activities as well. The webinar event link is in the chat box, and we'll stay on a few more moments, and we'll make sure to get the link if you want a one-on-one appointment for Cyberbacker, and then also the registration link for the January 15th class. And then we'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. for our last session. Oh, you know what? We had problems with that. Oh, you know why? It's because there's a dash, I think, after it. Let me see if I've still got it because I copied and pasted it earlier. Hold on. All right. It's because that one got a dash added after it. So that one will register you for the webinar. And Abby, do we have the Calendly link for Kara? We'll get that up. Anybody have any questions, thoughts, or ahas from today's session? It's so quiet. All right, let's see. We're gonna control, copy. Here is the link if you want a one-on-one appointment. And if you're interested in the business planning clinic, you can just throw it in the chat box and we'll make sure we track it and send you the invite for that separately. It's getting ready to go out anyways this week. So fabulous. Thank you everyone for joining us. We will see you tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. We'll talk about creating wealth. Yay. You're welcome, Stephen. You're welcome, Leticia.